Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Late Night with the Borg. It is Brendan, as always. Thank you for joining us on Jackrabbit Illustrated, Facebook and YouTube pages, as well as the FFN YouTube page. We appreciate everyone for joining us late tonight. We didn't really put the normal link out, but thank you for everyone who does end up joining us here tonight on all the pages. We are here for your cathartic comments and everything else that may come with it. Appreciate anyone who does join us tonight. Tough one for the Jacks. However, we're going to talk all about it. Borg is not here yet. I will say this. First off, we got to thank our title sponsor, Kubota Dealers of South Dakota, with 9 locations across the great state of South Dakota. There is always a Kubota dealer near you to get yourself into some orange equipment to take care of your farm, homestead, ranch, or acreage today. Get yourself into some orange equipment and have some nice equipment that is reliable with service points at all 9 locations, as well as parts available for you as well to fix your own equipment. Get yourself into some orange equipment today. Thank everybody for joining us. We do appreciate it. Got some comments rolling in from our one and only Ben Pearson. I forgot to reply in the moment, but I don't think putting Henry in was a dual QB situation. I think it was no different than what we did with Mark and Chase last year with a +1 running package. I can't disagree with that. Brian says, "Oh, Borg, where are you?" Brian is coincidentally right next to me. He's hanging out here tonight and just here to make me, remember the loss. So that's always good. No, Taco King's a good buddy of mine. So Garrett says, Cole won the Peyton tonight. Ben says, you're going to provide therapy for us. You're the best. Well, I'm here to be a punching bag, so that's fine. Jordan Fink says, tough night trying to staff off the internet. I'm assuming he means stay off the internet. I feel like everything that could have gone wrong for us did, and NDSU played perfectly. I will say this, based off of the comment from the douchebag rage baity fuckboy site that is Reddit FCS. We have to remember what this team lost. Long story short, NDSU came out and kicked the shit out of SDSU in this Marker game. I mean, there's no denying that. That's the reality. That's what happened. I don't think Chase Mason changes that game from the worst loss since 1991 in a SDSU NDSU matchup. He makes it better. He makes it so it's not that type of loss, but that doesn't change anything. And you have to face some of the facts. NDSU did not have the turnover that SDSU had from everybody leaving that got stolen by Jimmy Rogers, the whole coaching staff turning over. You have to keep some of that in memory, and then you do bring in people to change, to make up the gap and make up for the people who you lost, especially when they take 3 year starting running backs and one tragically dies in his sleep, on top of all the players and recruits you lost. I mean, that's brutal. So, that's something to keep in mind. There's a long season left. The season is by no means over. There's no reason for the team to hang its head and pretend that the season is completely trashed. There's nothing to play for. That's nothing like that. I do think there was some of you got a bunch of players who are new to the rivalry and didn't know what it's like. I think that's a real thing. And then they got hit in the mouth with it and never recovered. All that being said, Cole Payton was that good. He really was that good tonight. And I know Seth Meyer said he won the Payton, or Garrett Meyer said Cole won the Payton tonight. I don't know if he won the Payton tonight, but by God, he looked like a Payton Award winner. I mean, he just hit throws, and when you can throw to a guy like Bryce Lance and just throw it up, I mean, Bryce Lance was killer, play after play after play after play. It was brutal. I think the thing that surprised me is that the defense just never stepped up. They never stepped up, made the play when you needed it. Personally, I think I expected the defense to keep it closer. The score in the first half, to be honest, was just shocking to me. I really thought that they were going to hold them tighter, but it just didn't happen. That being said, we're going to bring in the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Zachary Borg, and let him give his comments on the game tonight. We haven't even mentioned Chase Mason being out or Luke Marble and how that went, anything like that. But I've been having enough of a go at the buffet, if you will. I think it's time for Mr. Borg to step in instead of me.
Apologies for me being on a little late because I was the one who said I'd be in here at like midnight, and then right as I was ready to come on, my dog needed to take a dump, and probably is a kind of fair analogy for what the game ended up being if you were an SDSU fan. Definitely was a bit of a dump on the SDSU side of things. Obviously, I think you have to start off with the credit to NDSU. They definitely were. As advertised tonight, I know Brian, like you said, he's there with you. He had said they were going to get 35, and he pretty much hit that number right on the money. I kind of was with you. I thought that it was going to be a closer game, but I also kind of was talking to my wife. I'm like, yeah, I could kind of see it going this way. Still, I mean, I have thoughts. I think that everybody always asks me for a pick, and I don't really like. I don't like picking if I'm not getting paid for it, because if you're going to put yourself out there, why do it if you're not making money off it? Number two, I think the one thing that I think I've said is that it's kind of, I can't remember what the other line I said about, what was the other thing I said about picking a game, but yeah, I don't like doing it if I'm not getting paid. But, number two, I never made any money in journalism anyway, so I never had money to gamble with. So I've never really been a gambler. There you go. Especially my last job at Gray Media. They really don't pay you there, so didn't have money to gamble with. But the two things I thought going into this game, and I tweeted it right, I think, before it started, were we'll know by the third down conversion rate and turnovers. Those were going to, typically those tell the tale in this series. And it's a little deceptive in the end because the second half was just kind of whatever, I think both teams kind of took their foot off the gas in the second half, to put it mildly. I mean, SDSU ends up winning the turnover battle, but, it was kind of a.
Yeah, but did they really?
Yeah, did they really? That's a fair point. And the bad news was you get the turnover, but you're pinned at your 1 yard line and you don't really have a working offense. So, it was kind of a maybe if they'd moved it out to the 20, it would have helped. But, but yeah, that first half, NDSU goes 6 of 9 on third downs. And a lot of those were third and longs. Like there were a lot of third. And when I say third and long, it wasn't just like, 3rd and 5. It was like 3rd and 6, 3rd and 8. I think it was a 3rd and 10. In that opening series alone with NDSU, their first couple plays, they had a penalty back them up. I think they had a 2nd and 17, if I remember right. Picked up some yards. They had a third. You have to get – the point of it is when there have been blowouts, and usually it was the playoff games in the past, the playoff games really devolved – when they couldn't get the Bison off the field on third down. And that became the problem in this game. I mean, they could not get them off. A lot of it, you have to give it to Cole Payton and Bryce Lance. I had somebody asking me, well, why aren't they double covering him? Some of that's fair, but a lot of it was him just making unbelievable plays, catches. I mean, he caught a back shoulder that, I don't know that there's much anybody could do. I thought he was perfectly – it was a 26-yard gain or something that set up maybe the second touchdown. I'm like, that's pretty well covered there. I'm like, I don't really know. Yeah, I mean, it's a bad decision. I agree. For one thing, you have to assume we might see this game again. So, they will have some things to work on. Because honestly, they got some pressure on Peyton. They got a couple of sacks when the game wasn't completely out of hand, which was basically after 14. Basically, once it hit 14-0, it felt like it was a runaway. They were getting some pressure. They got a couple sacks on him. Obviously, the first big touchdown run that he broke probably should not have been a touchdown run. The second, the last one in the second half, game's probably over at that point anyway. It looked like everybody just kind of gave up. But, that's the concerning part. And the secondary had problems last week. It was the secondary struggled against Murray State. They're having some issues there where, they're down a lineman or two now. Chase Van Tol's out. Hopefully that's not serious, but he's in a walking boot. It's starting to give me some 2019 vibes and not in the good way. And I think, where I will be a little more critical with the coaching staff. And again, I know, like you said, you haven't talked about, Brian, I do think the hold was missed, but I said this on Twitter and I'll say it again. Doesn't really look like that's going to matter at this point. I know it was 21.
No. I think complaining about the refs or calls when you lose by that much is ridiculous, to be honest. It doesn't matter.
And it wasn't going to matter because they weren't getting them off the field on third down. Right before that, they had a 3rd and long. You have them 3rd and 8. You have to get them off. 3rd and 8 is the winnable. If it's 3rd and short, if it's 3rd and 5 inside there, okay, that's a little bit higher percentage. If you are the offense, if you're the defense. And the Murray State thing, people are going. I've had several people go on. I've had several people talk about Murray State. Again, I know Indy issue. People were freaking out when they were close with Indiana State or they were close with.
Yeah,
nobody gave a shit about those two games. I'm sorry, both teams were overlooking those two teams, and who knows what Indiana State would have looked like if they didn't have a 5-hour lightning delay. But both teams had kind of overlooked. You could tell watching those games, both teams were looking on to the next one. So, this idea that they weren't blowing people out by enough or what? No, I don't buy into that. The secondary. The secondary had some angles, and they messed some plays up. I think that's definitely to be fair. But, it's a mixture of things. Like, that's where they're going to have to figure some things out if they have the second matchup. Because I think they were getting pressure on Peyton. I think before the game got away from them, he wasn't necessarily breaking the big runs. I don't know if maybe they were more worried about him breaking big runs and were trying to spy more than they should have. But it's going to be something they're going to have to figure out because they could likely see these guys again. Maybe, you'll see how this season's evolving if the injuries really start to, become an issue. But that's the one thing that I really defensively, it kills you. The third downs, when you can't get off the field, not only that, it's a momentum thing because you're on the verge of getting them off the field and you're just giving them new life. It's just a momentum. It's a smack in the ass at that point when you can't get a team off the field, especially on 3rd and long. And the Jacks had so many opportunities to get them off the field, and they just couldn't stop it. Whether it was Lance making a play, a blown coverage, whatever, no excuse. You can't have that many 3rd and longs get converted. And that's when they got paddled in the past, that was one of the big reasons. And that's a big reason they got paddled today. But my other thought, to get to the Chase Mason elephant in the room, is I do think it's a different game. I don't know that I'm not saying they win the game. I don't think it's 38-7, but I don't think it necessarily excuses the coaching staff from some criticism at this point. And I know there's been some talk about I had that little reply to Craig Haley, and I'm not going to get into that. I disagree with him. I think plenty of teams do that, and I think that makes sense to not really.
I'll say it, Borg. His fucking comment was nonsense, and he can go fuck himself. That is a garbage.
I'll leave it to you.
I will absolutely jump out and say that. To say, I don't know why, if Chase Mason was going to be in a boot, you would even bother with pretending that he might play. Well, then you're a fucking moron, know nothing, and you should never report on football again. or you can take your arrogant ass back to the East Coast and shut your goddamn mouth, because that's stupid. There's absolutely every reason in the world for what they did, and that's fucking moronic for the dumb shit he said. And Craig, I'm talking to you. Come fucking say something to me about it in Nashville when I'm down there, or hide in your hotel room some more. That or fucking don't be an idiot. That's a moronic take.
I'm a little nicer.
Just a smidgen.
I respect everything Craig does. I disagree with him on that point. And everything from my understanding, there's a lot I can't really say. My understanding was that Chase, there was no firm decision. They did not know on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday that Chase wasn't going to play. This wasn't like, oh, we knew at the beginning of the week and we're going to bluff you the whole way. I think there was genuine optimism, genuine hope that he was going to play. I think Chase, up until probably at least last night, maybe even earlier this morning, had hoped he was going to play. But, it's just it's bad. It's a bad situation. So I don't think this was a thing where they were – and I still think – I still think even if they had known on Monday, I still think you do that. I think, frankly, the one thing you will wonder about now, depending on how serious this injury is should they have even played him at Murray State? Should they have just let him rest? Because, frankly, they're going to beat Murray State. They struggled, but that was, again, they had to throw their quarterback in on the fly. If they'd given him, frankly, that would have been the more interesting play, because then you don't know what's wrong with Chase Mason, and then you really have everybody guessing. But I think had they actually known for sure 100%, we're going. But I think you can make an argument based on the way they called the game that they didn't truly know, because I'm truly disappointed with how timid they came out and just punchless. That to me was, you're up against it right away. You're going in with your backup quarterback. You're going into it with your backup quarterback. This is not the ideal situation, but you can't go in there timid. You've got to. I think the one thing I said right away was, if I'm them, I would take a deep shot right off the bat. Take a deep shot, or you know what? That's what they ran when they ran. What the stuff they ran when they had the touchdown, that trick play with Castaneda, and then the deep throw. And I do have highlights on my Twitter page if you want to run them. I don't know if that's possible.
If you want to be sad.
Yeah, I don't know. Because I remember the one time at Sac State, I was able to get him up on YouTube. I don't know if I'll have that time now. Maybe I'll try and. Although it's mostly an issue, obviously, so not as fun. But in fairness, their day, they deserve the flowers. But I think they did. They obviously had the 5-yard run play, which is a good play right off. You get good yardage right off the bat with Lothridge. Then they run what looked like some kind of screen to me on the field. I don't even remember what the third down play was. And then from there, it just was very timid. Like, I would love to see them try the trick play right off the bat, or just take a deep shot. You can't come into that game timid.
Well,
and they're going
on that.
Yeah.
And on that, my thought process is you've got a great defense. You've got a good offensive line. If your number one starting quarterback is not going to play, then those are what you're going to rely on to step up and make big plays. And I truly thought they were going to the cost of a bet for me, which will be paid off at a later date.
I'm aware of
but
this
I really thought they would keep it closer, just, off of whatever you want to say, pride or whatever. I really thought they'd keep it closer, and like you said, it really was punchless. Whether that's from play calling or how the players came out or whatever, it really was punchless. Now, a quick shout out from Jordan Fink. Jordan Fink says, I do orthopedics. Seriously, might not have known. It might not be a smokescreen at all. There's no way Craig could even know the details. And that's why I'm so vehemently shitting on him, because you are a reporter in Cincinnati at best, making comments on an injury that you couldn't be bothered to show up for the game for. So maybe shut your goddamn mouth on what was or was not reported, because you don't know. And you for damn sure weren't in the room finding out about whether this was or was not happening. From most people who I know who have some inkling on what was going on, it was not some smoke screen. This wasn't like, well, we're going to trick him. It was, they didn't know. They wanted to give him a chance to see if he could play. They didn't think he could go, but it was a thing where maybe he could. And we still don't know. And you know, coming up on the schedule, you would think at least he should be able to take the next game off, you know, for a week, maybe more. We'll see. If he needs it, if he doesn't, I don't know. We still haven't had enough that I know of an official release of what his injury is,
and I don't
how
expect it
severe
either.
it is. Yeah, exactly. Nobody expects it. That being said, I really expected, you know, to lean on your running game with Julius Loffridge and to lean on your offensive line and for them to get pushed. And it was just, it just didn't play out that way. It just
Yeah,
didn't. It didn't
I mean,
perform how I hoped they would.
it was very conservative coming out, and
Yeah.
to do that, because if you're NDSU, and again, I'm seeing some comments it was worse than Indiana. Again, you have to give the Bison their flowers. This is a really, really, really good team. I'm not ready to put them on the, is this an all-time NDSU team yet? Because I don't know. I want to see how they do against UND, because I do think UND is really good too. And I would have liked to seen SDSU with their quarterback. I'm not, and it's also like we've seen so many really good NDSU teams. I don't know how to rank them until we get to the end of the year. But you know, I'm not going to say the Indiana State thing, because again, when you're down your QB1, you're going up against that team. That's a mountain in and of itself to go up against, and you're really, you know, you really have to step up unless you've got, you know, unless you're Alabama and you have Tua, you know, you had Jalen Hurts and you had Tua waiting in the wings. I mean, that's a tough thing. And the problem I have with the play, I guess the problem I had is just they came out too timid, and you knew in that situation you had to throw the first punch. You just have to. If you're going to have, I'm not saying it changes the game. I'm not saying they stay competitive, but man, you can't go 3 and out first series. You can't go 3 and out the second series, because what NDSU does is that's how you see their games get away from teams that are playing them that maybe are in it for a while. They got that 9-minute drive going, and then you're 3 and out right away, or for other teams, it's a turnover. It's almost like a never-ending drive at that point, because you're basically not getting off the field. Your offense can't do anything, and you're just constantly being worn down and grinded away. And obviously, you know, again, I don't think that excuses the defense for the third down problems, but when the time of possession is nearly double, I think the final number was 38-01 to 21-59, and that got helped out by the second half just kind of being a nothing burger, to put it lightly. When the time of possession is 2-1, there's not much you're going to do regardless. Like, what is there to do with that? When your defense is on the field all day, they could have been better, but they're not winning that game.
Well, I mean, yes, but from the start, they never made a stop to begin with.
And that's the third down problem. They had the chances, and they just
they got them, and they honestly held up on the first, second down pretty well against run plays, and they just couldn't make the plays on pass plays. Now, I will address this from Garrett Meyer. Indiana State at least had some fight last week. That is an unfair take to me, because if you think NDSU gave Indiana State the same amount of attention, their players, even their coaching staff, as they do to the Marker week, the reality of the Marker and being South Dakota State when you play NDSU, and I'm gonna catch shit from fans from other fan bases, and I don't care, because they just don't get it. I don't care who you are. unless you are USD, who happen to have beat them the last 2 years, you don't get NDSU's full attention every year unless you are South Dakota State. You just don't. That's reality.
The only other one is maybe Montana State. Montana State, if you're playing, Montana State probably does too. Now,
Right. Montana State, Montana out of conference. But if we're talking in conference games, you're not getting, like, even if, I'm sure the coaches are just as focused as they try to be, but there are 18 to 23-year-olds that you are going on the road to Indiana State where there's 5 people in the stands, and then comparing that effort to a heated rivalry game in a road environment with 19,400 people with a record stadium. That's not apples to oranges there. And a bad one, no less. A bad team, no less. It's just not the same.
It's the same thing that happened at Murray State for SDSU. It's just, you could tell both of those teams were not giving the same. I mean, I'm not saying you don't give effort, because you only get 12 games and then however many in the playoffs, but it's a different intensity level. Especially, like, as you said, both those stadiums in Murray and Indiana, there were a couple hundred people in the stands. I don't know what Murray's attendance was. I know Indiana's was worse because there were rainstorms and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, I wonder, the other half of that Indiana State game, and we talked about this last week, was they had that horrific injury to Dudenheffer, who gets carted off. His parents are walking off the field with him. And then for 5 hours, they had a lightning delay. And by the time they actually came on the field, Dudenheffer somehow was back. I mean, we don't know what that game would have looked like if they'd had to play right, if they just kept moving on. I think getting a 5-6 hour reset was probably the best thing that could have happened to them, because it clearly got them refocused. I still think they would have won by a sizable amount. But
right. Well, and Garrett says it's not about NDSU's attention. It absolutely is about NDSU's attention. It is. When you are a top team, it's the same as SDSU not giving a lower end Valley opponent the amount of attention they probably deserve because they are one in whatever. It does have to do with NDSU's attention as much as it does with SDSU's attention. You're not getting the same game to compare the game you're getting out of NDSU when they play Indiana State or pick another bad Valley team. It's just not the same. It's just not.
I mean, the best analogy I heard, it was from Stig, and I'm a little verbatim on there. But everybody thinks it should be consistent all the time, the same machine. And he said something to me once, and it's pretty well said, was that, you can say whatever you want to them. You can coach them up. You can do this and that. End of the day, it's still 60 individual kids getting on a bus. And you don't know how they're going to handle it. You don't know what they're going to do. And the reality is, they'll repeat the whole, we'll play them one game at a time cliche, but you ask pro athletes, professional athletes, they go into games and they'll admit after the fact, yeah, we thought we had this one and we kind of played down to our competition a little bit because we thought we had this one, or we were looking ahead to our big matchup with whoever next week on Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football, whatever. I mean, you look at the NFL right now, it's a parity league where teams that are terrible beat teams that are really good every week. You can't tell me those teams are actually really – the Cleveland Browns, sorry, Tanner Castor is watching. The Cleveland Browns are actually a really good football team and can beat anyone on any given day. No, somebody who's playing Cleveland is probably thinking, we got this one in the bag, or playing, pick your shitty NFL team right now. The Jets, somebody's playing the Jets and says, well, we got this one. And yet a lot of the Jets losses have been pretty damn close. They're just not good. And that's a pro football. Now you move to college.
Well,
and not the same level of play, obviously, but it's just that that's people who think that everybody really does play them one at a time. And kids, not professional athletes, kids are not looking to the next game or aren't don't play down to competition. When professional athletes do it, you're delusional. That's all I got on that one.
So I will say this too. If every team that was a lesser opponent always got beat, then the games wouldn't have to be played. It'd always be on paper. And that's the way it goes. Now I will and I want to say this. This is taking nothing away from NDSU. NDSU absolutely beat the hell out of SDSU tonight. There's no denying that. Up, down, sideways, left, or right. NDSU beat the crap out of SDSU tonight. Now, can that change in the future? Possibly. There's a lot of factors. Who knows? But right now, it doesn't look great. But there's a whole bunch of season left to go. Who knows what happens? Who knows where the potential matchup happens? Right now, the most important thing going forwards for South Dakota State University is Indiana State. And then after that, it's the University of South Dakota. And then after that, it's the next game. It is 1-0 the rest of the year. Somebody, I think it was Mitchell, pointed out earlier that Jimmy Rogers did a great job at getting, teams up for games like this and everything like that. I did mention before the game that I was a little bit concerned that the attitude was this is just another game and everything like that, especially when you look, here's the deal too. We hear that in the media. We don't know what's really happening in those meetings. We don't really know what those talks are like and everything like that. But you have a bunch of new players, new to the rivalry, come in and don't know really. You don't know what it's like until you know what it's like. You don't know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know until you're in it. And that's kind of felt a little bit that way. We talk about that first drive. NDSU just absolutely took it out of them. They did. They came out and punched this team in the mouth, and there was just no punch back. You can argue that, maybe if Chase is in the game, maybe there is more punch back. Maybe that punch just took all the wind out of their sails, but that does not take anything away from what NDSU did. They came in and in front of a record crowd, slapped SDSU straight to the ground and just kept slapping them. And they never got up off the pavement. They never got up.
Did what they had to do. I mean, did what as much as we wanted to think that it was going to be a close game, did what probably is expected of a team that is facing, on paper, when you looked at it, it did not probably look that good considering what was happening. I mean, I'll make an argument there that, I'll not – if you're going to tell me that if there's an odd chance that Chase Mason was going to play, I think it looked that way because, again, I just didn't see any real – I'll also say this too, because they tried that Jack Henry package. I'm kind of done with these quarterback specialty packages because I don't think they really work unless it's against really bad teams. Ironically, we saw this over the last couple of years with Cole Payton and Chase Mason. You know what's coming when Jack Henry or the running quarterback is coming in. I don't think it works. Just let them cook, let them marinate, let them cook. I understand they were trying to get some running element with their quarterback, and obviously Luke Marble's not really a runner. But, man, I mean, that's, if you really want the running game, maybe you just play Jack Henry. I mean, I don't know what to say on that other than it's not those running packages. I think we saw the last – because what was the – I think as we were kind of talking about in the tailgates, and yes, I actually made it out for a little bit today, as we were talking about with Brian, people were like, oh, my God, Cole Payton can throw. We didn't know this. Well, we didn't know it because all they ever did was bring him in on a stupid running package that basically just let him run the whole time. It also helps that you have Bryce Lance, too, and some really good receivers. But, like, when all you ever do, I just hate those packages anymore. I think they're very – against the bad teams, you're going to rack up numbers. Against good teams, and I realize there aren't necessarily that many in the FCS anymore, against good teams, They know what's coming. They're not going to get fooled by it.
That's such an overblown. I'm so tired of the Mike McFeely. There's no good teams in FCS anymore. Bullshit.
I hate to go there, but I mean,
it's
last year especially was.
There's never been that many good teams in FCS. There just hasn't. What year was there 10 great teams that could all be national titles?
Well,
tell me when there was 10. Tell me when there was 7. There wasn't. There never has been.
I think Georgia Southern leaving was the big. Georgia Southern.
Okay, so Georgia Southern leaves. App State leaves, and SDSU and NDSU took their place. So we didn't drop any there. There's no drop there. So you can argue James Madison leaving, but or Sam Houston leaving, but at minimum right now Tarleton is taking Sam Houston's place. This argument that there's no good FCS teams left is such a Valley centric, in my opinion, mental block, because teams we knew are gone. Like, there's never been really. You can go. Timothy Rosario went and put together a whole article on actual national title contenders based on statistics and everything. Blah 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 blah. All that crap. Realistically, there was at best 4 teams in most years.
It's not even some of the teams that have left. You're talking about, you think about this streak that ended tonight, the 33-game home win streak, which was 3rd or 4th longest, I think, in FCS history. The last team that had won here before tonight wasn't NDSU, it was Northern Iowa. And it's not just the teams that are leaving the FCS to go to the you're right on that. There's a misconception that, everybody's just going up to the FBS and all the good teams are going to FBS. That's not necessarily true. You've had a lot of teams and even some conferences. SoCon, to be fair, they lost one of their best members about 10 years ago.
2 of them.
You've had a lot of teams, and Northern Iowa is at the forefront of that just for a number of reasons, they're not funded well. They're not a priority with their institution. A number of FCS teams that were once really good. UNI, to me, UNI is the prime example. I mean, they may not have won a national title. They didn't even get to the semifinals that much, but they were absolutely a contender. Part of the reason they never got to the semifinals was, like so many times that happened to the Jacks, they would lose a close game in Fargo and end up in a bad bracket on the road. So it's not just the teams that have left, and there are some good ones that have left. You've just had a decay of some really good teams who have gone from really good to just either middling or all out and out bad. And that's, I think, the other issue. I think that's the encouraging part I've seen with the Valley, at least this year, is you've had teams like Illinois State, at least until the last few weeks. Granted, I know they won today down in Vermilion, and we'll get into some of that a little bit later, but you've had at least some teams that have shown a bit more of a pulse this year. Last year in the Valley, it was so top heavy that it was, as fun as that was in the Dakotas, to have 3 of the 4 just really elite. The rest of you knew almost every other game in the conference was not going to be much of a game. And, that's the disappointing part. Youngstown looks like maybe they're finally starting to piece some things together, but it's still a far cry from where they were. And I realize that, and to be fair, a lot of that also has to do with who's moved up to the FBS, or the FCS with the Dakota schools coming in. But it's not just a matter of who's gone to the FBS because everybody wants to join the FBS party. It's a matter of just these schools that were once really good and was probably never sustainable to begin with. That's probably the number one thing. It was probably never sustainable. They've decayed so much that it's also hurt the division.
I think some of it is that not so much that, UNI obviously, yes, they've fallen back big time in investment in the program and everything else. However, some of it is that the Dakotas, especially your SDSU and NDSU, have pushed that envelope so high. You look back 10 years ago, even when NDSU was in the middle of their big run. They were not the top spending team, and they're still not the top spending team, but they're very close. And at the time, they were not that close. You had teams spending more than them on their programs, and now you're to the point where, with facilities and investment, SDSU, if you take out the $2 million that they spend a year on the stadium, paying it off, and NDSU are pretty similar, but they're at a spending level that a lot of FCS teams can't match. I mean, that's a reality. Now, that's where the Ivy League moving in is big. That's where Tarleton State is big. That's where West Georgia coming. I mean, people, we get impatient because over the last 4 or 5 years, we've had the
Prisoners of the moment.
Montanas and the Dakota States, and people are annoyed, and I get it. But I will say, West Georgia comes in and they set the second team in history to win their first 5 FCS games, right? Since NDSU. That's a good sign. You've got the Ivy Leagues coming in. That's a great thing. They can spend with the best of them if they want.
Rio
I mean, you
Grande
look at
Valley's
Brown's
spending some money.
facilities. Yeah, Rio Grande Valley's coming in. They want to be serious. They've got, the teams coming in and all that stuff. I just got handed the operating budgets for football, and SDSU's at $9.6 million. And you go down the list, and NDSU's at 6.5. So you take the 2 off. SDSU spending roughly $1 million more than NDSU. But that all being said, they're both very much at the top with Montana State. You look at like a Stony Brook or a William and Mary that are at the top. You've got to remember that part of their budget is, every budget includes scholarships, and Stony Brook's a private school. That's not, so they're going to Stony Brook is not the same cost as going to SDSU. So their scholarships are this much more, whatever. But my point is SD or the FCS is not this dead, nobody's good, nobody's trying. But it's also important to remember that this whole subdivision was built off the concept of containing football costs. That was the whole concept, is you contain football costs at Division I level. And there's very few teams overall in the FCS that are there to focus on football. Most of them focus on basketball. So they're not going to invest the investment, but there is some of them coming up. And like was brought up by Zach McKinnell, you look at the FBS, there's not 10 national title contenders there either. This parity, there's no good there's no good programs in the FBS either then, because there ain't 10 national title programs there neither. So what do you want? But there's teams coming up, there's programs coming up that are investing, that do care, that are doing well, that I think get pushed to the side, and we pretend that, well, they'll never be good because they're not us. They're not the Dakotas. They're not the Montanas. They won't be as good as us. Like, okay, that's what everybody said about us when we moved up, and that's changed. That changed. So that's I get really tired of the McFeely. Well, I'm tired of the FCS. I'm tired of the FCS. There's nobody good in the FCS. I'm bored of it. This is boring. I don't want to be in the FCS. This is boring. Shut up, Mike. Stop it.
Don't put me in an awkward position because I do kind of work part time.
Right. Sorry.
Yeah,
it's just I'm not.
I'm also
and it's not. And I don't.
Yeah.
If that's your take, that's fine.
No,
but it
I
doesn't
know.
have to be every time you talk about football. You have to bring that up. Holy crap! Give it a rest.
No. I also wonder, too, if he doesn't just want to take a trip to it a little bit nicer. And I don't blame him for that one. I don't get to travel regularly to the wonders of Terre Haute and Macomb. And, so, I mean, I would admit going to Las Vegas. And although for me personally, when I traveled, I never really got much of a chance to actually enjoy, unless it was the national championship week when you're actually there for a week. I never got much of a chance to actually enjoy the scenery in a lot of the road trip areas. So, if I actually were traveling with an FBS team, I probably would not get a chance. If we went to if I was back at CSU, and God, you guys thought you got paddled. At least you got paddled by a good team. I think one of the things that, the point I'm saying is I would never have time to actually go to enjoy the Strip after a CSU UNLV game, or go to the beaches in San Diego after a San Diego State game. So, but yeah, I think it's just one of those things where the FBS level. I get the Bison fans who are. Yeah, nice comment, Daniel. Technically, not really. I'm part-time. I'm diplomatic about everybody, Daniel.
He's very diplomatic about media members.
Hey, I'm not. I know my shit stinks too. So I'm not above reproach. I'll put it like that.
I know I'm not, because I'm just an idiot talking into a microphone.
Yeah.
If people don't understand that I'm just a random guy jabbering at 1 a.m. in the morning.
The fan show. I'm on the fan show, and I'm admittedly, though I pull for the local teams because I would rather have a good story. It's more fun coming on after a win than we haven't sat. This is the first really, well, I guess other than Oklahoma State last year, this is the first really, second bad loss we've had on a post-game show. The other ones were all close ones. But yeah, it's one of those things where I understand the Bison people who are quote unquote bored with this. Well, I do and I don't, I guess, because me, I'm going to throw these guys into it. I got to figure out which way I'm pointing. I've been fortunate to watch one of my favorite teams go on a dynasty run, and I don't get sick of it. It's like, I know it's a different level, the NFL, but if I were in college and I was watching if I were watching CSU win national championships over and over again in any level, I wouldn't be like, we need to go to the next level, or, there's no way I would get bored with it. I don't think there's anyone in Alabama who got bored with winning FBS titles and says, man, I wish we could go to the NFL. It's one of those things where I get some of the boredom. I get you want to maybe challenge yourself at the next level, but you also have to realize there is a ceiling. Like, you're not going to win the FBS national title. Right. You're just not. I know the joke is, we'll go Bison against the world. We'll take on out. There's a reason they're not playing Alabama, kids. There's a reason they're not playing Georgia. Other than the fact that I'm not saying those two schools would return the call, but you're not there. There comes a point, if you can even get into the club of the FBS playoff, because if you go to the Mountain West or Conference USA, you could run the table there, but the league may be so crappy that you don't get the one seat at the table. And who knows if that seat's going to be there that much longer, because we know the big boys really want to kind of get away from everybody who's in the smaller level. They don't really want to keep giving the little guys in the group of 5/6 a spot. So, and I agree with Brian. I would have loved to seen that. And I would have loved to seen the NDSU Oregon game. I would have loved to seen the SDSU Nebraska game that year. Those were games that absolutely could have been won by the Dakota schools. But frankly, I think those games are going to get rarer because part of the reason game day didn't come here was how big the SEC is. And they have their TV contracts tied into that. That wasn't the case 6 years ago when the SEC was a little more normal, when you didn't have Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC, when you didn't have Oregon and Washington in the Big Ten, and you didn't have I don't remember if Big Noon was actually on back then. I don't think it was, but you didn't have Big Noon competing with them, and you didn't have these massive TV contracts. So there's just not, I get it. You want to go to the FBS. You're a little bored of things right now, and it certainly does seem like the FCS is not that competitive, but you're going to go to the next, I guarantee you, after 10 years, 15 years of FBS in what looks like right now a pretty bombed out Mountain West Conference. It's not a great Mountain West Conference this year, and it's not going to get any better when the guts of it goes to the Pac-12 next year. Or if you go to Conference USA, you're going to get just as bored with that. Yeah, Boise. Okay, here's the thing with Boise State. They left for the FBS in the mid-90s, early 90s. Mm-hmm. That was a different era. They were able to, if NDSU had left in the mid-90s, sure, they might be in this. They might be Boise right now, but you're not going to make that rise. Not in the era where these 4 conferences control everything, and they're not going to let the outsiders in. They want to separate, and they want all the money for themselves. They don't want the little guys in. So that's why I think we've said it before on this. There's going to be different divisions. So, like I said, eventually you're going to get bored with going to the same crappy ass bowls. Yeah, it would be great to go to the FBS playoff once in 5 years and 10 years, but A, there's no guarantee that's going to happen, depending on what conference you're in. B, when all you've ever known is winning and winning and winning in national titles, what happens when you're not going there every year? I don't know. I can tell you I've been to the small-ass bowls. They're not that fun. They're just not. And it sucks when you have a good team, and yes, CSU was actually good once upon a time. It sucks when you have a good team that you're like, man, I would love to see that team compete at the national level, and you just know they're not gonna because we're not big enough and we're not into club. So that sucks. And I think that reality would eventually hit India. Yeah, there'd be the new car smell for both NDSU and SDSU and whoever went up. You'd have the new car smell for about 5-10 years. I mean, there was that for the FCS. You'll have big, it's been kind of on and off for the new schools that have gone up to the FCS from up. But, yeah, there'll be big turnouts to whatever bowl games they go to. But what happens when you have to go back to the same bowl game the second time or the third time or the fourth time? And then you start to realize, is this really that much? Basically, aren't we doing the same thing we did in the FCS, but with no championship, and this bowl game means nothing? It's an exhibition. So that's why I've always been on the boat of, just wait until they actually create another playoff for the, or until they separate, create another playoff, and then go when you can actually compete for something. But it's just, I don't know. That's a bit of a tangent. We just went on there. Yeah. But anyway, it is. I mean, and it's not one of those things where I don't think SDSU or NDSU would have a problem competing at the FBS level. Don't get me wrong there. They'll be fine. Look at how crappy some of these conferences are. Missouri State is what, 3-3 or 4-3 right now? 3-4, 4-3. They were on Tuesday night or Wednesday night, and they've been a terrible FCS team for most of their existence, yet they're 500 in year 1 of FBS. So yes, NDSU and SDSU would be fine at the FBS level. The problem is, if you're bored with this setup, you're going to get really bored after time going to bowl games. And these days, the bowl tie-ins aren't even that good anymore. Half the time you end up playing there are bowls where you play conference opponents in your own conference. There's a Frisco Bowl.
Crazy.
I mean, you're going to get the boredom will come when after 10 years of it, you're going to the same bowl game destinations. And that's going to happen until there's some kind of reorganization of college football. That will happen. So don't mistake me for saying, oh, these schools couldn't compete in the FBS. They could, because the FBS is mostly, a lot of the FBS is watered down FCS at this point. It just is. I mean, Conference USA might as well be an FCS league.
Yep.
So, none of that. But I think.
Speaking of the FCS.
Yes, let's actually talk more FCS.
Let's go over some of the results today. Something that brings joy to my heart. And, I saw some of these results rolling in and I liked them so much. I got an uneasy feeling about tonight, and turns out I was right. Presbyterian goes down to Dayton 35-19. So thank God I'll never have to hear about Presbyterian being ranked again, right? Right? That's not true. There's going to be some idiot out there going, well, he still beat. I don't care.
That's the same person going to try and claim they deserve a top 8 seed.
Right. It's like, okay. All right. But beyond that,
well, I thought you were going to lead
other
with saying that you're basically right on USD that they're toast.
well, I was also right about USC being toast, but I was going to let that dangle for a minute.
Because that was basically the only other big game in the Valley today. Because
Yep.
yeah, I mean it's and again, I've said this to a couple Coyote fans, and even the Coyote fans have agreed with me. I'm like, again, technically, I can't say it's over because if they won 2 out of 3, 7-5 with a top 10 win would get them in. But if you can't beat Illinois State, who is slumping like that, it's hard to imagine you're going to win necessarily any of the 3 left, much less 2 of them. So it's just the thing that is maddening to me about the thing that's maddening to me about USD just remains their offense. The defense is all right. I mean, I think they struggled a bit today with Rittenhouse, but the defense gave them chances to win that game. And that's the thing. I mean, obviously, against NDSU, they were cannon fodder, but as we've seen, this is a really good NDSU team. I don't think that's necessarily a come down for them. The defense has given them enough chances to win the games they've lost. It's the offense that keeps dropping the ball, literally and figuratively at times. Like this was the 7th game out of 9 they scored on their opening drive. I think this was only a field goal. The other ones were touchdowns. And for the life of me, I don't know how you can be that anemic on offense, but script a really good opening drive that blows my mind. I mean, there's a number of factors, but to be so good on your opening drives and then just be nothing, basically the rest of the game is wild.
Yeah, it's they're good. Their script is set up well, and they struggle to adjust when teams adjust to what they want to do. Raphael Gale's asking who's JSD, Brian. That's just South Dakota. That's been a common joke around here ever since that was said, because it was brought up on Hack City by the Hack City podcast of they were talking about a USD game, and they said that's just South Dakota, not South Dakota State. So that's been a running joke ever since, because I mean that's just an incredible
now
line.
I will say for those of us, by the way, I know this is obviously a little raw tonight, but we should learn on Monday the kickoff time for the USD SDSU game. Similar to what happened, similar to the timeline, they always kind of release it the week before. So I would expect Monday we'll learn when the game in Dakota Dome kicks off 2 weeks from tonight. Still kind of expecting that's going to be a night game, and I'm guessing it's on ESPNU. I'm a little surprised this Marker game was on ESPNU, but is what it is. Probably for the best that it was on ESPNU if you're a Jackrabbit fan, because
not mad about it, I guess.
A lot more people would have seen that on ESPN too. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm going to go down there next week because I'm doing a little story on their that Native American helmet they got. So I'll get a good look at UND. So
it's better than their military helmet where the paw is great, but then they have that other logo on the other side. Logo. Yeah, and it looks like it says votes instead of yotes. I can't unsee it. It looks like it says votes every time I see it. So.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll be curious to see what they, as I said, if they win 2 out of 3, but it's ifs and buts and candy and nuts, because Illinois State was the one that looked the easiest of the 4 they have left. And if you can't get that one, and you are who you are at this point, like I'd love to see them turn it around and find some way to get into but even then, if they get in the playoffs, they're probably going to Fargo at this point, and we know how that will end. So, it's just, they are basically who they are at this point, and it's disappointing to see their offense be this bad and just not unable to adjust. It's a lot of things to go around, coaching, players. It's been kind of a failure on a lot of fronts there. But I'll say this too for the SDSU fans, and I know it's easy to just pencil that in as a W, but they're going to throw everything at the wall in that game. And with SDSU's injury situation right now, I said I'm getting 2019 vibes. What happened in 2019 when they were super banged up going down there? So you can't just pencil in that game in the Dakota Dome as a win for the Jacks. It will be, it'll be sold out. There'll be a lot of blue in there too, but that's a Coyote team that will, regardless of what happens with UND next week, they're going to play that like a national title game because it may be their only chance. That may be their last real game, especially if they lose to UND. Especially if they lose to UND next week, then that's it for them. That's their senior day. They know if they lose to UND next week that they're pretty much toast. Although, basically. So I think it's 7-5 that get in if they beat UND if they beat UND or SDSU. I think
no.
Yeah, they would. A top 10 win.
They need more than one top 10 win at 7-5.
That might be fair. I think that might be fair, but
I think they need more than one. Like they don't have, as it currently sits, they don't have any good wins. Like if they had, if you already have a playoff team win and then you get a top 10 win, sure. But we forget it's a 12-game season. So realistically, the bar is.
I've started breaking down who. I have to do a little more of a breakdown of who is on the bubble right now.
I guess I shouldn't. You're right. I shouldn't be so hardcore. No, but the odds are low.
Well, the odds are bottom line.
Need everything to break odds are low. You need a lot of teams to lose games.
And I said too that I said coming into the game today that I didn't think 7-5 would get in because I assumed 7-5 would be them beating Illinois State and SIU, but losing to UND and SDSU. I say 7-5 could work. 7-5 could work if you somehow beat UND and SDSU and still lose to SIU. That could work. It would be weird as hell, but I'm just saying these are technically the way that things could happen, but I don't think they will. And again, realistically, it's all kind of out the window if you can't beat Illinois State at home when Illinois State was
reeling.
Yeah, and the other half of it is you look at the rest of the Valley now. And this is just the Valley again. I would have to take a wider look at the bubble as a whole. The teams that are on the lower end of the bubble. I mean, who's Illinois State's quality win right now? Who's Southern's? I mean, these teams are all kind of falling off for whatever reason. So that's why a door was kind of open for USD if you beat Illinois State. And then maybe you get, then who knows where Southern Illinois is going to be by the time you play them. If you beat Illinois State and you beat Southern Illinois, then all you have to do is probably pick off either UND or SDSU at home, and then you're in the playoffs. But now it's pretty much you're really going for a Hail Mary here, and then you have to become a team you've not been all year, which is a really good offensive team. They just don't put up enough points to win football games, and that's the problem with them right now. So, but I guess the rest of the Valley, moving on from that, obviously USD gets UND next week. If we're talking about consistency, the most consistent team beyond NDSU is the other Dakota. If it's just South Dakota, do we call them J&D up in Grand Forks?
Yes, I'm for it. I think North Dakotans would be for that.
Well, they the effing Hawks. To be fair, I'd rather call them effing Hawks because we know
it's more fun to say that. It's just more typing, though.
They took care of Indiana State 46-17. Don't think that was ever really a game, as you would expect up in the Alaris Center. And Jerry Kaminsky, Sawyer Seidel. I mean, those guys were on a heater. I mean, I still don't know. I've had a lot of talk. I would just like to know what on earth the previous coaching staff saw or did not see in Jerry Kaminsky a year ago to bench him, because he goes 22 of 34 today for 304 touchdowns. And considering that they basically had no passing game a year ago, I mean, I get it. The kid's probably improved with the summer, but where were you hiding him? Obviously Schmidt has had quite an impact on that team because, man, I'm shocked that he's been this good. And that's the one thing I see. I'll be curious, if they're going in guns blazing. We know how weird the Alaris Center is. The 2 times the Bison have played there, they've been close. They've been tough games for them. One was a bad loss. The other was a game they kind of pulled out of their rear end. I think UND, as much as everybody wants to say there's no chance the Bison are just going to, I want to see how they do it. Other than the fact I would have liked to see Chase Mason in this game, and I'd still like to see him if they meet again. UND, I kind of go with Daniel there. I think UND, there's a little bit of USD. I'm not quite saying from 2 years ago, because USD 2 years ago didn't have offense. USD was struggling offensively 2 years ago, maybe a little more last year, because USD with Josh Davis last year really had it going offensively. But that'll be another one that I'll be interested to see with the Bison, because they've always historically kind of struggled in Grand Forks.
Right.
And this looks like a really good UND team. And that will be true as well for SDSU, no matter what, no matter who's playing under center for the Jackrabbits. That game now, I mean, the funny thing was when we talked about the marker a few weeks ago, we're like, well, this is probably just the battle for the 1 and the 2 seed. It's not that simple anymore for SDSU. It's really not. I mean, it's, are they probably going to be, if they win out, they're probably, I just don't see the committee seeding a Valley team 1 and 2. I just don't.
It would take a lot.
Montana
like Carlton would have to lose. Montana would have to lose.
Montana could lose to Montana State. I think that's possible.
You'd need Montana to probably lose 2 if you wanted UND as the 2, because you still have that head-to-head there if they have the same record.
Yeah.
I think you would need it to be SDSU wins out. But with the score discrepancy, it'll be curious to see how, if hypothetically SDSU wins out and Chase Mason comes back for the last couple of games, does the committee, who historically has said they look at injuries and the effect, do they take that into account and give them some leeway into getting the 2 seed because you were down your starting quarterback? I don't know. There's a lot of football left to be played when it comes to that. There's a lot of losses and wins that need to happen before we really make a good idea. I mean, even with my knee-jerk reaction on USD not making it 7-5, there's a lot of football that needs to be played yet.
Yep.
And to be honest with you, I am wiped out after today. I'm dying here. I apologize if I'm in and out.
You're good. I can carry it for a little bit longer before we wrap up. Obviously, imagine if this thing had been a close game and we'd gone on here at 2:30 like you were thinking we might earlier this afternoon in the tailgate.
Right.
This had been a typical game that comes down to the final minutes and but no, obviously the rest of the I think we covered the Valley. They're pretty good. I mean, Youngstown's trending up. Obviously, they took care of Murray State. I think Youngstown's looking like they're going to be a playoff team, probably. We'll see what the rest of the season portends for them. Southern Illinois, the Sokolukis got back on track against Northern Iowa, who I'm just pitying at this point because they are such a far cry from what they were. The Big Sky, obviously, a lot of us watched it last night. The Pandas over Sacramento State. I don't know that they care about it, but that probably will axe Sacramento State's playoff chances unless they win out and win at Davis and go 8-4. I don't think they're getting in at 7-5 because Lord knows we've said if you think USD's resume is weak, Sacramento State's resume is just as weak at this point. So the only chance Sac State has to get to the playoffs would be to win out and beat Davis in the Causeway Classic at the end of the year. Yeah, you have the 1,000-yard stare. You do, buddy.
I probably do.
Montana State today, I thought this was a game that maybe could trip them up just a little bit. They go to Cal Poly and win because Poly's has been improving a little bit, but they win 34-17. Yeah, they've been, ask our friends at Sac State that a little bit. That was 34-17, but they pretty much controlled that. Poly scored a couple of touchdowns in the fourth and kind of made that look better than it was. another one of those teams that I said had declined over the years. And to your point about the budgets and how much the Dakotas have spent, you weren't wrong on that. Believe me. Yeah. Losing to all these JV teams is keeping me going. Yeah, well, poor Doctor. Well, no, he made his bet on that one. But Eastern Washington, I think they're at least looking like they have a pulse again, which is kind of nice. They haven't really beaten anybody, but compared to where they were, I mean, that's another program I'd love to see kind of get back into a semblance of contenderhood. I don't know if they can, but UC Davis, bit of a tough time at Northern Colorado, 27-16 there. So the Aggies still kind of doing some good things, and big second quarter kind of helped them pull away. That's about it for the Big Sky going on. Any other ones I'm missing here?
Not off the top of my head. I haven't looked at the SoCon yet, but
yeah, I mean Furman took down the Citadel. I mean, I'm just running through it now as we wrap up. UC Davis didn't have, yeah, Zach said UC Davis didn't have their starting QB either, so we'll have to see where that takes them. That could not. They've had horrible injury luck the last few years. I mean, they hung with US. They were with USD stride for stride last year, and then they lost their really good running back in that playoff game. Who knows what that would have looked like? But yeah, I mean, SoCon kind of had a nothing burger of a week, I think, from what I've seen. I don't think they ended their. I mean, Mercer beat VMI 62-0, but I think the big week for them is coming up next week, if I'm not mistaken, because, yeah, you got Mercer and Furman going at it. And we'll see what that does there. Going to check in on Tarleton really quick. I will give a shout-out, a small college shout-out, by the way, to Northern State.
Yes.
At least somebody beat a team from Fargo-Moorhead tonight. They won 49-48 in, I think, a couple of overtimes. I'm not sure if it was one or two. I think they have another big crowd up at Dakota Bank Stadium. So, I say this a lot. Really cool that you can have 19 grand, almost 20 grand in Brookings and about 7,000 or whatever it is up in Aberdeen. I mean, that pretty says a lot for the fandoms in this state when you can get that. But yeah, they play at Augustana next week, and who all of a sudden is kind of positioning themselves to maybe get a top seed in their region, but they got a tough end as well. So big shout out to Mike Schmidt. I don't know how they got busting with the boys to kind of sponsor them. That was a pretty good week all around for the, other than the result tonight, pretty good week for the South Dakota programs that you get, two within a relative, not too far of each other, get pretty decent national pub. Obviously would have liked a little better outcome for the guys in the Brookings, but, that's life. You're going to have some, can't win them all. As I told my son, who didn't really seem to notice when I ran up to him today, he was still having a good time. So,
well, that's good.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, I had somebody tell me, it's like, I've never seen a kid so happy to see his dad. So I'm like, yeah, that's pretty fun. Like, kind of keeps it
that's awesome.
Kind of keeps it in perspective. And then, I guess wrapping up the UAC, West Georgia barely gets by Central Arkansas, 18-17. Tarleton, 31-7 over Eastern Kentucky. I don't think there's any real surprises there. Interesting game next week, probably Tarleton at Abilene Christian. I mean, I don't know if there's another. Abilene Christian's only 4-4. Of course, they were a playoff team last year. They went to NDSU. Kind of gave NDSU a little bit of a run for a little while in the playoffs a year ago. But, I mean, realistically, that's probably the last chance Tarleton has to lose a game this year. They have Austin P. Go P.
Let's go P.
They have Austin P at home on the 22nd, but you kind of would probably favor Tarleton because who knows where the Governors are going to be at that point in things if they take another loss or two. I don't know where they are on the bubble. Obviously, as we said, kind of getting back to that whole point about, hey, I don't really know the whole bubble right now. So, but yeah, I think Abilene Christian could be a tough one for Tarleton, but if they're going to take a loss, this is probably it in the regular season. So that's a game probably to keep an eye on as we now start to kind of look at the rest of the seedings. And then, yeah, I guess wrapping things up, certainly as we look ahead to next week, obviously Indiana State comes in here. I mentioned that they've had a bit of been a lot of tough times for Indiana State. They've been a program that's kind of failed to launch for a while, but it'll be interesting. The Chase Mason thing, he was in a walking boot. Chase Van Tol is in a walking boot. The video I had of Lofton Ogroski, you can see it's a terrific touchdown catch, but he came down really hard, and I believe he didn't return to the game after that. I could be wrong. I know he was in the medical tent in the third, and I don't think he played again. So this is a team, like I said, it's giving me 2019 vibes in the bad way, and they need to get their horses healthy. So,
Yep.
They just need to get their horses back in the stable, because I do think, I don't think it would end like it did in 2019, where they were bounced in the second round. I think they can advance deeper, but if they're going to have any shot of reversing what happened tonight, they got to get healthy. And it's not. Boy, there are some ones that you're looking at right now, and you're kind of worried about when guys are in walking boots. That kind of gets you a little. Sometimes those are just for show, but I don't really think that's the case this week. But again, next week's schedule. Of course, now my phone wants to die. I mean, you got SDSU, Indiana State. That's a 2:00 kickoff in Brookings. 1:00 UND at USD. Youngstown heads to North Dakota State. I do think Cole Payton probably wrapped up I don't want to say wrapped up, because you just never know with these national awards. They kind of tend to not like Valley teams. But if he didn't wrap up the Payton tonight, another good chance to do it next week against the Youngstown quarterback, who could any other year, he would be a pretty good contender for it. But would think NDSU should be able to take care of Youngstown. Northern Iowa's at Illinois State. Southern Illinois is at Murray, and some other games that are of mild interest as we, kind of keep an eye on some things. I'm looking at the Big Sky too. I mean, obviously got to keep an eye on Montana State and Montana. Montana is at Weber State. Fortunately, Weber State's not much. Montana State at Northern Colorado. The Bears have been a little bit of a spoiler at times, but looks pretty good for a lot of the top 5 teams we think will be top 5. We'll see where SDSU falls after a loss like this in the quote-unquote polls, but we'll see. And next week, like you said, I think there's definitely some concern. There would have been concern had they won this game, because Indiana State's that trap game in between 2 rivalry games. Now there's more concern because you don't know what the quarterback situation is. You've got multiple people out. I mean, their depth is getting tested, and it's, you can't assume anything right now moving forward.
I clicked out for a minute there. I'm gonna be honest with you.
I rambled. It's good. I think we're good there, though. It was a day.
It was a long day. It wasn't a good day.
Unless you're Bison fan. Or Brian.
Old Taco King sitting on my couch, just grinning like a goober at me over there. Oh, it was a great day. It was a really good day. It was great.
I do got to give it up to the SDSU fans, though. I'm surprised there were as many who stuck through the third. I think somebody did tell me, on Twitter, they buzzed out before the second half, and that stadium was still full going into the fourth quarter. It only started to thin out at the very start. I thought there might be more people who were going to leave at halftime, because there really didn't seem like there was that much hope. But that stadium was still pretty full in the third quarter. It was still pretty loud when they made that interception, and you wouldn't have really known that it was 28-7 based on the way the crowd was going and the way the stadium was full. So I do give it up to Jackrabbit fans for, staying as long as they did. Just didn't get much of a reward for it.
Yeah. So Good. It was a good crowd, and I think there was a lot of noise coming from the crowd. Multiple false starts caused, even when it was probably a little bit out of doubt or out of reach, it would have taken an incredible comeback. So hats off to the crowd. I do think they came ready to bring the noise, do everything they could to help. Thanks, Dan. I'm glad you're watching just to see me struggle through this. But otherwise, yeah, it's a new week. You got to flush it. Hopefully the team itself definitely can't let this linger. You've got to, as a team, they're going to have to bounce back from this right away. You got Indiana State coming. Are they a powerhouse? No, but you can't underestimate them and you can't be moping.
The saying when NDSU had lost a couple times in the regular season to the Jacks was it's about rings, not the rock. And if it were solely about the rock, they probably would have tried to find every which way to get Chase Mason out there. Will it change? If they do meet a second time, will it change the result? Can't guarantee that. But like I said, this team's got to keep playing. They got to keep winning. They got to get healthy. But, if they can get, especially if it's in Nashville, preferably it's in Nashville and they're not on the same side of the bracket. If it's in Nashville and you can run it back with a healthy Chase Mason and some other pieces, I'd absolutely run it back and see what kind of a game it is, because I don't think it would be 38-7. I don't think it would be some of the absurd stuff we saw tonight. I'm not sitting here and saying, oh, they would win, but I'd love to run this back in Nashville with a little bit different crew on the field because, they just – a lot of respects, the coaching staff, there's a lot of things I think they want to do differently. And as you said, I think you made a good point too, that a lot of players got educated tonight and it was a hard one. But if they play again, and if they are going to have any shot to reverse this, it was a necessary one. I think I saw the JFPA I think McKnight sent a tweet that it was somebody drinking and said, well, good. That's the best way to put it. If we are doing a championship show in whenever that is, January, December, we're going to look back on this and say this was the night that they figured some stuff out.
Yep.
Painful as it was.
Well, right now, to me, I think the biggest saying to me that applies is don't let a team beat you twice.
Exactly.
So don't let
go beat Indiana State next week. And although I said they do overlook people, this is where you do have to go 1-0 every week. So
yeah, and and we'll get into that throughout the week as far as that goes, because there will be plenty of discussion on Jack Rabbit Illustrated going on throughout the week.
Yeah, and I think my last point of the night, and to Brian's point, is like his guess is if another game happens, it's in Fargo. I think if the Jacks win out, they're a 3 seed at minimum. If they win out,
probably 3.
They're a 3 seed at minimum. NDSU's on the other side. So that's why, to your point, even more so, you can't let this become 2 losses. Because if you win out, you could still be looking at home field. Maybe again, I don't really think they're going to get the 2 seed because I don't think there's any scenario in which the Valley would get 2 top seeds. But if you're on the other side of that bracket and you don't have to go to the Fargo Dome, potentially going to Montana is not fun. Going to Tarleton, I'll take your I would rather go to Tarleton than NDSU. I'd still probably rather go to Missoula than NDSU. So that's why it is so important. They better flush the result and go 1-0, because if you do lose another game, then you could slip into that 4 or 5 range where you're ending up in Fargo in the semifinals or earlier.
Yep. That's fact. So with that, I'm out. I got nothing left. So
yeah, we're about done.
Thanks for doing this with us. Thank you to all our sponsors that I'm did a terrible job of mentioning. Amy Dix with Dreamers Do Travel. Thank you to them. Amy Dix, Dreamers Do Travel. If you want a Disney vacation, you want to say a vacation in Nashville, or you want to cruise or anything in between, contact Amy Dix at Dreamers Do Travel. They will get you set up. They'll set up your whole itinerary and put it into one neat package for you, so you don't have to do all the legwork, and they can probably get you a better deal than you can ever find on your own, because they've got the hookups with all your resorts and cruises and all-inclusive resorts. So talk to Amy Dix at Dreamers Do Travel. Also, Innovative Engineering in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I believe they're in Sioux Falls. Innovative Engineering. They've got all of your contacts for your HVAC and electrical plans that you may need drawn for your home or your commercial spaces, or anything in between. They've got you covered. They got all the licenses and everything else to take care of you with any drawings you might need for electrical needs. And that wraps up our sponsors for the show tonight. Thank you, everybody we got 49 people. We had 87 at one point. Thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. I don't know why you continue to do it. I'm half passed out. Thank you, Borg, for having the energy and bringing the energy, because I was worthless tonight, but I sure appreciate it. And everybody else did too. So with that, for Mr. Zach Borg of Forum Communications and this boob,
there he finally made the appearance.
He finally made an appearance. There he was. So
and me waiting for
thank you to everyone who joined us. Right. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. You guys have a good night. Thanks.